Perinatal mental health issues affect 1 in 5 new and expectant mothers, and 1 in 10 dads. 70% of mums underplay or hide how they are feeling. 50% never have their mental health needs identified, and of those that do, only half receive treatment. We are constantly told that having a new baby is a joyous, life-affirming event. But becoming a parent or carer can also be a stressful and potentially difficult time. A new child, even if it's not your first, brings new responsibilities and new challenges to your emotional and mental health. It's also a time when it's easy to lose contact with support networks and the things we do to wind down. The truth is that no one is perfect, and that sometimes the bravest thing we can do is to ask for and accept help.
When we was trying, I was nervous, but I said nothing. I'm always worried anyway, and everyone said a baby would be good for me. It just seemed like the next thing. My partner left before she was born, but I was locked in. There was lots of things to buy and learn, and doctors prodding at me. It was a whirlwind. When she came, I posted on social media that I was happy, but inside my head I was exploding, and I thought if anyone knew, they'd take her. I was crying, and a midwife told me about Home Start, and I got myself a volunteer.
The earlier someone experiencing poor mental health receives support, the less likely they are to need the help of more intensive services later. At Home Start, our volunteers and expert staff offer non-judgmental, compassionate and confidential support. We form relationships with parents and carers, build upon their existing strengths and empower them and their families to move forward. Because families invite us into their homes and lives, we are able to work in a way that is different to existing statutory and other support services, but that enhances and complements their important work. A trusted relationship between parents or carers and a volunteer starting in the home enables mothers, fathers, or anyone else involved to feel more comfortable about asking for further help, less afraid and less judged when they do.
My midwife was amazing, and my doctor was really great, but my volunteer, she helped me learn how to live. She said I just have to be good enough, and she came with me to a new mums group, and I found friends there that know what baby life is like. Her help helped me get what I needed to actually enjoy being a mum. And I love it now. And you love me too, don't you, little one?
I love you, Mummy.
Yes, it's been hard, but I'd do it all again.
If you'd like to know more about what we do or to get involved, visit www.home-start.org.uk today or contact your local Home Start directly.
I'm so very pleased to be able to introduce you to Jennifer Holly from the Royal Foundation, who is going to present to us the new framework. And she's going to workshop it a little bit for us to consider how we might best utilise some of the thinking and the framework behind it. So with no further ado, Jennifer, a huge warm welcome from all of us at Home Start.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, everyone. It's a real pleasure to be here today. I'm looking at beautiful sunshine where I am. I don't know if anyone wants to put a hand up. Are you all in beautiful weather, or is there clouds? Lots of hands going up, I can see, with lovely weather. It's beautiful out there. Although I have to say I am in a jumper because it's still quite cold. I'm down near London, so it's still feels a little bit more like winter than spring today. But yes, I'm really pleased to be here today. Thank you so much for having me. Before I begin, I wanted to share a little bit about myself. I've worked at the Royal Foundation Centre for Early Childhood for the last 2 years. But before that was colleagues with Sarah McMullen at NCT. So I've known her for quite some time. Prior to that, I spent over 15 years working in the field of domestic and sexual abuse, particularly focusing on supporting organisations, whether it was a small charity or a large mental health trust, to really connect with and support individuals and families who've been affected by trauma and abuse, mental health and substance use problems, homelessness, involvement in the criminal justice system, all issues I think Home Start staff and volunteers are very familiar with. And it was during this time that I got to know about the incredible work of Home Start, recognising the just astounding skill that's held by Home Start staff and volunteers across the network when you work alongside families who are affected by so many challenges, as well as the vital role you play in the local communities that you're rooted in. And I have to say, I did look earlier to see whether Home Start Guildford was on the call, because that's my local Home Start. And I was on the list for volunteering with you for so many years. But between family life and work life, I just never found the time. So I apologise, but always wanted to be part of the network. So here I am today. This is a bit thrilling for me to be part of this. It's been really wonderful this morning listening to the work you've been doing around perinatal infant mental health. It's a subject that I'm personally very passionate about. Hello, Home Start, sorry. Following the experience of having my own children, but also because, as everyone I think here knows, parents' mental health is such an important factor for infant well-being. And as was, really driven home this morning, well-being in early childhood sets the foundations not just for the school readiness, so in those early years, but for a happy, healthy life throughout our lives. So in the next 20 minutes or so, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the background to the Shaping Us framework, how it was developed, and then how we plan to use the framework at the Centre for Early Childhood and across the Royal Foundation, which is the organisation that we're part of. I've got a few questions for you as we go through it, and then after I've finished talking, time for you to discuss in some groups before we come back, hear what you think, and then I've got a short video as well to finish off. So for those of you who don't know, the Centre for Early Childhood was set up in 2021 with the vision of creating a happier, healthier and more nurturing world transformed by our collective approach to early childhood. We work to achieve this by increasing awareness of and action on the extraordinary impact of early childhood, really wanting to translate sort of compelling scientific advances to change what we all think and what we all do for children and families during pregnancy and up to the age of 5. The Centre's first big moment was the launch of the Shaping Us campaign with Layla's story. It's a claymation that was designed to tell the story of the science of early childhood. And the particularly important point that I think, Alex, you started off the morning talking about, that early childhood development happens through the relationships and the connections we have with the people around us. Following the launch of the Shaping Us campaign, we've used the Princess's very public platform to showcase and spotlight the work of many incredible organisations around the UK. So here there's pictures of her visiting the National Portage Association that provides home learning, educational support for disabled preschool children, and Dad Vengers, which is set up to support dads on their journey through parenthood. And of course, she's visited Home Start. Hillingdon stands out as a visit a few years ago as part of an event with the Maternal Mental Health Alliance to celebrate the life-changing impact that your work has. At the heart of all of our work on early childhood development is a focus on social emotional development. It's an area of child development I think we feel is less well understood, and parents often feel like it's being overlooked in the first months and in years of their children's lives. I think it's an area that we kind of use synonymously with infant mental health. So thinking about that social and emotional well-being and the skills that you need to have well-being, I guess, mental health in those early years. in recognition of the importance of social emotional development, in 2023, we held the Shaping Us National Symposium, which brought together academics, practitioners, representatives from organisations such as Home Start, and decision makers to discuss how we can do more across society to nurture these all-important social emotional skills in our little ones. Since then, we've developed the Shaping Us framework, which I'll tell you more about throughout this talk, and we launched it alongside an immersive experience for 0 to 5s called the Bowbeam Trail, which you can see in the bottom right picture there at the National Portrait Gallery, which is our first project related to the Shaping Us framework. And it really aims to translate the science in a creative and kind of unexpected way. And it was designed to nurture in a small way the social emotional skills of babies and children who went through that experience. The mission of the Centre for Early Childhood is that more children reach the expected level of social emotional development by the age of 5. This comes from our understanding that our health and happiness throughout our lives is promoted by being able to build and maintain positive relationships with others. At the heart of being connected with others is our social emotional skills. And if we nurture these skills, not only does it benefit our own well-being, it also helps us to build a more caring, empathetic society in which we can all thrive. The words on the screen are some from the foreword from the report that accompanied the Shaping Us framework from Her Royal Highness, and really does sum up why we feel this is such an important piece of work to do. It goes beyond not just our our own relationships and families, but really building a society where we are connected, and as I said, we can all thrive. So what is the Shaping Us framework and how did it come about? Way back in 2023, we were thinking about what our mission is at the centre and considering this mission of nurturing babies and children's social emotional development. One of the big questions at that time was, what does social emotional development mean? And what are the skills that we want to be able to support others to nurture in our little ones? This became the question that, or the question on the slide became the question that drove an 18-month-long research project to develop the Shaping Us framework that I'll tell you about in a little bit. But first, I want to ask you really, I'd love you to put in the chat, what do you think are the social emotional skills that matter most in enabling us to live a happy, healthy life? So anything you think, just give you a minute or so to put in the chat what you think. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Others. Esteemed emotions, feeling loved, values, love. Expressing yourself, absolutely. Regulation, empathy, self-esteem, positive relationships. Yeah, communication. This is amazing. It's such a brilliant list. Feeling loved and heard, empathy, connection, resilience. Finding humor. I love that at the beginning. If I remember correctly, the 3 H's, humility, humanity, and humor, was it, Alex? Got it. Fabulous. Love, feeling safe to express ourselves, relationships. Such a brilliant list. I love it. Independent, secure attachment, positive relationships, feeling loved. I love it. I love the whole list. What I think is really interesting in having done this work now and one of the reasons we went into a research process, love that play is in there, absolutely should be such an important way to develop our social emotional skills, as well as the ability to play, enabling us to do so much more. One of the reasons we chose to do a research study to develop this framework, because in theory you could just create it, but actually what we heard from many of our partners, sort of academic experts, was there's no consensus really about what are the social emotional skills that matter most. So we decided to run a research project. If you would like to go to the next slide, please. Yvonne. There was absolutely rooted in academic oversight. We had an advisory group, including academics from UCL, so University College London, King's, Yale, University of Pennsylvania, and Harvard, which ensured that the research process had the rigor to it that it needed. But more importantly, on the next slide, if you go forward, Yvonne, we chose this methodology, a methodology that was built around academic knowledge, but also the expert of clinicians and practitioners. And we engaged experts from 21 different countries who took part in a Delphi study, which is a way of building consensus among experts on a topic. And we felt it was really important that the framework was rooted in the everyday experiences of people working with babies and children and families, rather than just the knowledge of academics who, I have to say, I've worked in academia, have a great deal of time for them. But it can also end up being that they focus on a small number of studies that show certain outcomes, rather than really thinking holistically about people's lives and what's most important. So we went through this Delphi process. We had over 500 responses in total, in terms of different skills that all of these experts listed as being really important. We then turned that into a draft framework. And then on the next slide, please, Yvonne. What we did was took this out to the general public through testing. We commissioned a social research agency to check in with the general public. We had two small groups of almost 50 members of the public who over a week took part in a qualitative piece of research, so asking their opinions about the language. All of the words in the framework were tested to make sure it made sense to people. The structure, what it looked like, the narratives, really making sure that this would land well with people in the world as opposed to people in academia. We then went out to over 2,000 people in a survey to check some of the final points that were sort of niggling. We needed to check that they were right. And it was really important to do this. And what we found was, having launched the framework, that people have said it's really accessible language. They've not necessarily seen something like this before. So I think it was very much added value to the whole process. So we had that academic oversight, really rooted though in practical experience, and then informed by that public opinion. Next slide, please, Yvonne. And this, in its essence, is the framework. It's quite simple, which really was the aim. I think it's already been shared in the chat. You can download the more detailed version of the framework, which I'll show on the next slide. But there's 30 social emotional skills that have been arranged in these 6 clusters, as I said, all of which tested with the public to make sure it made sense. And it is a conceptual model designed to provide a flexible foundation for a wide range of individuals, organisations, to firstly talk consistently about social emotional development, so we all know what we're talking about, and to inspire more people and organisations to do more to support early social emotional development, to build activity around as is appropriate to your organisation, your audience, your role. And what we really want to do is build almost a movement, I think, reminding everyone of just how important this is. If you go to the next slide, please. This is the framework in its totality with all of the skills written down there. This is what's been shared with you in the chat already. We kept it really high level so that it can speak to lots of different audiences. There isn't this is what social emotional development is and this is how you do it. It really is for each organisation to use depending on your role in connecting with and supporting babies and children and families. So again, I'd like to stop for just a minute and welcome your thoughts. I mean, take a moment to look at the framework. I'm not sure if I can see if hands go up, so I don't know if Alex or if someone could help. But yeah, is there anything that stands out as particularly interesting to you? Anything you particularly like? I'd really welcome initial thoughts, if anyone has any. Or put them in the chat, that's fine too.
I'll start the ball rolling and maybe others will follow, but I think it's that accessibility that I really love. I think it's very, you know, it's the wording, the way it's used. I really like that. And on quite a personal note, but I'm happy to share it on the Know Ourselves. There's have hopes for our future. When I had my twins, I got very bad postnatal depression. It was undiagnosed. And the moment that I knew I really needed to do something was because I realized that I had just no hope or hunger for the future, for the next few months, for a summer holiday. So it's just a personal reflection.
Thank you for sharing that. And I hope that lots of people will see their experiences in this, and particularly because of the language. I mean, it surprised me how important that was. And things like, I think empathy is a perfect example. What does empathy mean? Most people understand it differently. So in here, I can't even remember what it is now. Isn't that terrible? Do you know, I've got it on my screens. It's my wallpaper for everything. So to understand and feel someone else's emotions, to understand what someone might be thinking. But then, you know, you go back, there was a lot of discussion about be kind. And if you look in the academic literature, there's people debating what the kindness means. But I think we all recognise there's general consensus on what that means. I saw a message there, national and cultural, absolutely. I think that one of the challenges with this piece of work was we went out to an international audience to develop the bones of the framework, but then we did have to come back to the UK for the public testing and I really do acknowledge some of the limitations of it, for sure. Prue, you mentioned there. And we have shared the framework internationally, and there's been a lot of positive response, but I agree, how people understand it will still differ. I wondered as well, and again, you can put it in the chat, thank you for the comments there. If you're thinking about the role you play, the work you do, the work volunteers at Home Start do, which of the skills in the framework do you think, give yourself you know, over the last 24 hours, which of the skills do you think you use or your volunteers use? Are there any particular that you think this is really very much what we do what we do at Home Start? Nurturing relationships. Listening, relationships coming up, really all about being able to connect with each other. Pause before you act. That was a bone of contention, pausing, the language of that. I think we got there in the end. Setting boundaries, being present, listening. Wonderful. Being flexible, lovely. And non-judgmental, accepting others, brilliant. I would like you to just, I think one of the things that Sarah McMullen picked up this morning, and I'd love to just point out to you, is the last cluster, exploring the world, is one that isn't necessarily often thought about in terms of social emotional development. Being creative and being curious and being able to feel joy. And I do think that is a really important part there, that we shouldn't underplay in terms of its importance for so much more of what we do in life. I've really learned a lot through this process, and particularly talking to a couple of academics at Harvard University who are leading the way on understanding creativity and curiosity in the early years. But both of those are so fundamental for so much of all the other skills that we think about in terms of social emotional development. You know, you think about relationships. If we're not curious about another person, how does that impact our ability to form relationships? Do we want to as much if we're not interested in the other person? Being creative is the basis for solving problems. It's being able to imagine a different outcome for something. It can be for managing some of the more difficult times in relationships, so managing conflict and things like that, being curious and wanting to understand how other people might be feeling, to resolve that conflict, being creative and thinking about how can I manage this situation to sort that situation out. So I would ask you to focus a little bit on that and think about, I bet you do that already, but can we do that even more, not think of it as a nice to have, but actually it's really core and fundamental to our social emotional development and thus our development more generally. Thank you. Can you go to the next slide, please, Yvonne? And really just to flag very quickly that whilst the framework was developed by the Centre for Early Childhood, we do see this and social emotional development as something that goes across the life course. I was reflecting on this, coming to speak today and thinking about, you know, the transition to parenthood. That is a huge period, significant period of social and emotional growth. You know, the number of skills that we might have had as children and adolescents, but then they are further refined, or or you might develop new skills as you become a parent and as you're then supporting the social emotional skills of another human being. Or it might be you have them but you never thought about it before, and it actually comes to the fore when you're supporting somebody else's social emotional development. You start to think about your own. And I do just think that we shouldn't think about this only in terms of early years, which is a critical time for development. But again, as adults and the adults we're supporting, what does this mean for them? So in terms of what we're doing with the framework, the next slide, please, Yvonne. We launched the framework in February. I've put this slide in here, not to pat us on the back because we got, you know, the BBC to talk about it, but actually because I always find working here compared to anywhere else I've worked, the idea that we can get the Daily Mail on like page 4 of the Daily Mail is talking about social emotional development, or the Sun newspaper. For me, it's always thrilling that it gets mentioned in Hello magazine. But I think the reach and the way that this piece of work has been able to connect with so many more people in society due to the Princesses platform, I find that really important. I think for us wanting to generally raise awareness about social emotional development and the importance of it across society, it was a really important step there, an outcome of launching the framework. The next slide, please. And more importantly, is the feedback we've had from the sector. And I hope we get some more today as you go into the discussion groups. We had one nursery manager sharing, obviously, just how important social emotional development is. It's the foundation of everything. Yeah, it's something you never achieve and move on from. We must always return to these, and the framework will help us ground us and bring us back when things are tough, which, listening to some of the conversations here today and with so many partners of ours at the centre, we do recognise what a tough situation many organisations are facing at the moment. Next slide, please, Yvonne. So yes, we hope that we can help create a future society shaped by the framework. If you move on, Yvonne. Our aim is for the framework. As I said, it's a high-level framework, but to inspire commitment, action, investment in the development of these vital skills through early childhood and beyond. And moving forward. So as I said previously, we launched the framework along with an immersive experience at the National Portrait Gallery. Did anyone hear about this at all? It's not a problem if you didn't, it's okay. Anyway, it was launched, yes, in February and ran till last Sunday, actually. And the idea was to use a really creative space and opportunity for families with young children to do something that, without knowing about it, nurtured their the little ones' social and emotional development. And the idea of doing this in an art gallery might sound strange, be a bit peculiar. It's not your normal space for this, but was exactly that, was to bring more organisations and partners into the conversation to show that this is something that we all play a role in being able to support. If you go to the next slide, please. And what we plan to do over the next 18 months, 2 years, is work with galleries and museums around the country to develop their own immersive experiences for children and families. So I hope that it will come to places near you, but also to work with the usual suspects, the early years sector, organisations like Home Start, but also work with new partners such as businesses to think about, in an example of business, what as an employer can you do to make life easier for parents so that they can then not only look after their own mental health, but then go home and support their child's social emotion, their baby's social emotion development. So we're really looking to work with organisations across society so we can inspire, enable others to do more on this important issue. If you go to the next slide, Yvonne. Yeah, I think I've spoken to that. And then forward again. To flag, I think, really importantly, that whilst the Centre for Early Childhood has a mission of all children reaching more children across the board, reaching an expected level of social and emotional development by the age of 5, we are still focusing our efforts on those who are more disadvantaged and are less likely to achieve that those levels of school readiness, for example. Whether it's because of their ethnicity or being living in areas that are economically deprived or where that intersects, but focusing on all, but within that understanding that we need to support those from disadvantaged communities more in order to bring up the overall levels of expected social and emotional development. On to the next slide, please. We're also thinking about, and I think this is interesting for the work of Home Start too, how social and emotional development is important for the other programs at the foundation. So we do work on early childhood, on community impact, so building resilient communities, homelessness, illegal wildlife trafficking, which is always sounds like a bit of an anomaly. But going back to homelessness, we've been thinking recently about the links between social and emotional development and homelessness, particularly in terms of care leavers. And we know that experiences of homelessness is a known risk factor for delays in social and emotional development in children. Homeless families can find it harder to access the kind of emotional and social support that they need. So children who are homeless are more at risk of having lower levels of social and emotional skills, and children who have better social and emotional skills do better on other outcomes such as academic attainment. So these skills have a protective factor. And then poor relationships, trauma, abuse, are known to increase the risk of homelessness in adulthood. And one of the thoughts is that potentially these experiences impact on the children's social and emotional development, leading to poor relationships in adulthood, the increased risk of mental health problems, which contributes to homelessness, the sort of Judith Herman's approach. And if you've grown up with fewer social and emotional skills, then when you're at risk of homelessness, are you then less skilled to be able to manage that situation, connect with people, get the support that you need in order to avoid or for homelessness to be prevented in your case? So it's just sort of thinking in the round, actually, that this is much more than only mental health, but really connected to many other issues that Home Start may be dealing with. And finally, on the next slide, we're looking to use the framework to strengthen our workforce. The people, as it says here on the slide, are the fabric of any organisation. And the skills in the framework are central to nurturing a workforce that not only is healthy and happy, but also is effective. So we're thinking about the framework. We're having discussions about how does the framework help us to think through and articulate our values as an organisation, think about our capabilities as a workforce, and leading on from that, help us design a professional development programme that works, but also think about building our strong, and for us, innovation is really important. So building strong, innovative teams. And social and emotional skills are definitely viewed as being at the heart of that. And I think as well, what I was considering listening to some of the talks earlier today was how does this help us also connect with our partners? Because none of us work in isolation, but these social emotional skills are also there and really underpin our ability to connect with other organisations in our local area or nationally to improve the situation for babies and children and families. So that I've spoken enough. I would love to go to the next slide. And I would ask you potentially to take a picture of this slide. So you have these questions when you go into your groups. I think there is the link to go into the chat, into the breakout rooms in a moment. But just a few questions there. What are your initial reflections on the framework? What are you already doing really well in terms of supporting the social and emotional development of the little ones? How could this framework help you do this even better? And how might it help in particularly the social and emotional growth of your staff and volunteers? If you can, in terms of feedback, I think we have about 15 minutes for the conversation. If you then collect your 3 points to feedback written in the chat when we return to the main session, that would be really helpful. Thank you. I see there's a question. Is there a plan to work together? Is that what? Yes, we would love to. Absolutely. I'll leave Alex to answer that more. And somebody's asked a question, using the framework for impact measurement. I think it's a good question. We have not suggested, lots of people have talked about measurements today, which is wonderful. As a research and impact manager, I love talking measurements. Measuring social and emotional development is a minefield, and it can be done in different ways. Thinking about measuring each of the skills in the framework, measuring social and emotional development, for example, with a composite measure, such as, the school readiness could be a bit of a proxy for that, but not exactly. It's one of the things where I think, depending on where you work, you will need different kinds of measures that reflect how you work and what you do. So we haven't specified how measuring against this. I think that would be a 10-year project, to be honest, and the amount of discussion academics would have about what's the right measure. Thank you very much. I hope you had a fruitful conversation, or if you needed to, you went to the loo or got yourself a cup of tea or whatever it is you need to do to make you feel comfortable and good. If you were able to pull together sort of 3 or 4 points to feedback, if you're able to put that in the chat, it would be really great to capture that. So whenever this is written up or whatever's done next, there's a record of it. So if any groups could do that, it would be brilliant to see. I'm really conscious of time. Part of me wants to start a conversation with anyone who has something desperate they really want to say. I think we'll leave it with the chat just in case. Okay, volunteer preparation course. I'm thinking Vicky, Alex, Yvonne, that will make sense to you, yeah? It's everything we do in Endeavour. Brilliant. Prep course.
The prep course is the course that all volunteers do before they start supporting families across all home starts.
Brilliant.
Course
okay.
of preparation for volunteers.
Fabulous. I saw something there about reflective practice, which I think absolutely that makes a lot of sense it could be used in that. It's what we're already doing. Producing different languages, would love it to be produced. I'm going to take that back to the budget holders where I work to see whether that's possible or when. Love the idea of it helping, feeling valued and part of a bigger movement. Absolutely, that's what we hope we can generate. You do it in bucketfuls. Love it. It's really positive. Thank you very much for that. Keep going, bringing in that feedback, and we'll collect it all. I wonder whether, Yvonne, you'd like to share the video. This is a video that was created to share alongside the launch of the framework, and just sets out really what it is, why social emotional development is so important. And we'll play this and then leave it. I'll leave this all with you. So thank you very much for having me, and over to Yvonne.
Historically, everybody focuses on physical development, child growth, but actually what research tells us is that social and emotional skills are important. They're a much stronger predictor of our outcomes in adult life.
When we focus on nurturing these skills early in childhood, we're really setting our children up to develop those skills even further as they go throughout life.
People often think about writing and reading, which of course are all important, but actually, unless they learn to connect with each other, unless we build relationships, unless we show real love to those children, they really are not going to learn. So actually, the social and emotional development, often underplayed, really should be overplayed.
It helps get them into speech and language, helps get them into good routines, behaviour patterns. Getting the social emotional development of children right allows them as a gateway into everything else to do with child development.
Babies have a full range of feelings, just like we do as grown-ups. So when parents really try and understand what's going on for their young child and try and think about what their baby or young child might want from them, then we can start to support social and emotional development by responding in the way that's best for the child.
The capacity for carers, parents, to give sensitive responding, to provide sort of joyful opportunities, that's such an important part of social and emotional development.
What the framework does is it pulls together these really important social and emotional skills that children learn throughout childhood, and it starts in pregnancy. And then the moment they're born, they want to communicate, they want to connect, even though they can't talk. They're like a giant sponge, soaking up the information about the world around them. And what we know is that they respond to sensitive, attuned parenting, a world which feels safe and predictable.
I think the cluster knowing ourselves is very important, because it's literally about how children get what we call a sense of self, and that's quite important in the relationship, because they then figure out where they are in relation to the rest of the world or the rest of their friends.
Knowing ourselves is really critical, and having that sense of our own agency and our capacity to influence ourselves and to influence others, and also the opportunity to think about how we can aspire and make a difference in the world.
By having those foundations of managing emotions, we then are able to form relationships with others, to have that resilience that we can actually tackle the world.
We'll have times of great joy in life as well as huge times of sadness. Many of us will experience that. And it's so important that we learn to manage that when we're little, when we've got people around us who can help us to manage those emotions safely.
If we don't have that skill, then what we might end up doing is reacting to that emotion in a way that's really unhelpful in our day-to-day lives.
One of the clusters in the framework is about focusing your thoughts. A young baby learning to stack a pile of bricks. The first few times they do it, they'll fall over, and actually as a parent, to support them, to give them encouragement as they're learning how to do it, builds perseverance, and that's really, really important for future adult life.
Focusing on our thoughts is critical in that regard. You know, it's one of the key drivers to how we then are relating to each other and understanding each other.
Communication with others for children is all about relationships.
We are teaching a baby the dynamics of listening and being listened to, and to actually speak to them, to talk to them, to play with them, allow them a space to make a noise, to make a babble. By talking to them, they understand that conversation and communication is a really important part of life and of development.
We can encourage them to know that it's okay to be able to communicate to their parents in whatever form that is, whether it's verbal or physical. That's a really important bit, because that's where they learn how to progress and how to communicate with others. It's not just your child that's exploring this world for the first time, it's yourself.
Nurturing relationships, we're talking about the capacity to develop trust in others.
Practically what you can do is to love our babies, love our children, so that they know they're loved. Through that love, they learn what it is to actually love other people, to have stable relationships in return.
They need to feel that somebody will love them. Nurturing relationships is also amongst the adults. It's how we model to them.
We want to encourage children to be able to go out to the world in a safe way and explore things, explore their senses, smells, the touch, the taste.
Children are curious and interested in so many different things. For a child to be curious, they have to be secure.
The earliest years really matter. They help to shape who we are, how we interact with the world around us, make us feel secure, comfortable in who we are as a human being.
The warmth of relationships shapes us. The warmth of connections shape us.
What I love about the framework and what I love about the clusters is actually, although they're set apart in these areas, they're actually connected, and there's a golden thread that connects them. And the goal that we're seeking there is the fact that if we can achieve these skills, they will become the happier, healthier children, and that means we will have a happier and healthier society.
Thank you, Jennifer. What a lovely film. Thank you so much for coming to talk about the framework. I sort of have a sense that it might be the beginning of a longer discussion. I don't believe that Sarah McMullen is with us for this session because she has got a board of trustees meeting that clashes with today. So I think Vicky and I in particular will bring back some of this feedback and thought, and I think perhaps we can all have a discussion about how we might further support the network to consider this and us working a little bit more closely together.